Hello, and thanks for joining us today on NCI Live. Today, joining me today is my partner in crime, John Ryan, who's also a technical solutions specialist here at NCI. Our topic today is going to be the Microsoft Server 2012 R2 end of support. A lot of you out there have Microsoft Server 2012, so this is kind of uh, a big topic for us today. Welcome, John. How are you doing today?
Hey, good. Ready to talk servers.
Awesome, awesome. Can't wait. So, just a reminder for those of you who are joining us live, wanted to make sure that you uh, chat us your questions because we are live, and John and I can talk about it and answer any of your questions. Uh, so, feel free to chat us those questions. Anyway, John, let's talk about this. So, what do we got here with Server 2012?
So Microsoft announced the end of support for Server 2012 R2, which is the second release for the original Server 2012. And along with that, because Server 2008 and Server 2012 were pretty popular operating systems for companies and for software developers. It's a pretty high impact to a lot of customers that are still running the old server operating system. So we have until October to replace or upgrade the server installs. There is very few options for extended support, but we have a lot of people kind of getting in line to do these upgrades early, so that we're not running out of time, to get them updated. One of the things to know is that you won't be getting any kind of updates or support from Microsoft after the end of support date. So what we're going to do today, we have a good amount of information to go through, but we're just going to talk through some of the options, considerations, risks, all of that stuff related to
Sure.
upgrading.
Sure.
So
Before we get into that, just a real quick thing. Exactly how big, I mean, we've talked about some of the other releases in the past, but really why this is an important topic, in my opinion, and feel free to disagree, but is that 2012 R2 is a long-term stable release, and it's been out for quite some time, and is probably one of the more popular versions, as opposed to people that have upgraded and gone through. They've stayed on 2012 for quite a long time. Am I right on that? Would
you
you
are,
agree
yep.
with that?
Yep, it was one of the more stable releases, along with it introduced a new file system
Mm-hmm.
that was faster
Mm-hmm.
and more efficient than just the regular NTFS file system. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I actually have a slide that talks about the history of Server 2012
Great.
and 2012 R2.
Let's
So
get into it.
released in October of 2013. It was the server version of Windows 8, which a lot of people probably don't know that. But along with Server 2008 and 2012, kind of like I mentioned before, it was highly leveraged by software manufacturers for application compatibility and development, meaning there was a lot of ERPs, backbone operating, software that a lot of people use to run their businesses that was specifically designed for Server 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's why there's such a big impact on a lot of customers right now, because not only do you have to upgrade your server operating system, but you might have to upgrade your system applications too. So
Right.
your ERPs or any of your custom applications may have to be upgraded as well. So it's not just a quick, hey, let's just update the server and we'll be good to go. So
Mm-hmm.
this was there was a couple other things that were kind of cool about it when it came out. You could swap back and forth between Server Core and the GUI version. Server Core was basically the command line version of Server, so you didn't have any opportunities to really run anything from the desktop. So it made it a very stripped down, secure format of the
Mm-hmm.
operating system.
Increase the
And
performance
then
quite significantly as well.
correct, yep. And then the new REFS system, which is a resilient file system, replaced NTFS and made it just operate and work faster. So I think that's why they leveraged it so much, because you could do so much more with SQL, and you could do more with high amounts of data and transferring data in and out of the server operating system. So
definitely. No, there was a lot of things that happened in 2012, and it was a major shift. We don't talk about Windows 2008. We don't talk about Windows 8. Excuse me. Just like we don't talk about
right.
Bruno, we
Oh
don't
yeah.
talk about Windows 8.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like Millennium if you're going to talk to
Oh
about
God, no, Windows Me. Yeah,
that one.
no,
Yep.
no,
Windows ME.
no. All right.
So one thing, so basically with this presentation, we're going to talk to you about kind of what to know, what to expect, what the experience is going to be like upgrading. And before you upgrade, you basically have to check your system dependencies, right? So you have to know what applications are reliant on that Server 2012 installation. So you're going to want to look at your list of applications. You're going to want to consider whether you're going to want to do an upgrade or a new install, like what options are available for you based on the type of servers that are there. So, and we'll go through that on another slide here, but you'll also want to check and see what your support from your third-party software provider is. In some cases, if you haven't been doing upgrades to your software, your third-party software, you may have to purchase a new version of the software that's supported on 2019 or 2022. Yep. So engaging your third-party software providers is really important at this stage. Then from that, based on the type of server it is and what your third-party software provider supports, you can select what OS you can upgrade to. Maybe you only can upgrade to 2016. In most cases, you can go to 2019 or 2022. And the whole point behind this is to make sure everything is working correctly after the install. You don't want to upgrade your operating system and then figure out that some of your software doesn't work, and then you're scrambling to either revert or restore from a backup so that you can get back onto Server 2012 to make everything work, or have to make a quick purchase through a third-party software vendor. So
on that point, if I may interrupt, there's a lot of pieces, and when you mentioned that, you're probably going to talk more about this, but what I've seen is that Windows Server 2012, a lot of applications, because of the new, I'll call it the headless format without the GUI. A lot of applications like SQL-based, Oracle-based, whatever, they really stayed stable on that. As you said, moving forward, people would just be like, I'm just going to patch it. I'm just going to get a service pack. I'm not going to do upgrades. And now, unfortunately, you've just compounded the issues that you might be having. So by not having that, now you have to upgrade not only the server, but those services that are key. So
yep. Fair? And if you do have, if you do have a server that is what we would call like an in-place upgrade, as long as you don't have any dependencies tied to that that's not compatible, then you can absolutely do that. You can just upgrade the OS, and Bob's your uncle, and you're good to go, right? But if you do have those dependencies and those restrictions on it, you have to start really planning out and working around those. So.
Gotcha.
Another thing too is if you are a VMware environment, there are hardware and VMware limitations, and we'll get into that later too. But the two different types of virtualization software or platforms, there's multiple ones, but the two that we see the most are Hyper-V and VMware. And Hyper-V, when you install the new server, if you were to upgrade your Hyper-V server, you actually get the new version of Hyper-V that comes with the operating system. With VMware, you would have to either have the ability to upgrade your VMware through your VMware licensing if you have support, or you would have to purchase new VMware licensing in order to get on a supported level that supports Server 2019 and 2022. So,
excellent.
Yeah. So kind of a list of things to go through on each of the servers. Speaking of in-place upgrade versus new install, Microsoft recommends in-place upgrades are okay to do for file servers, utility servers, and print servers. So basically, anything that you're really not going to have anything tied to as far as heavy applications or security services or any of that kind of stuff. They do want you to do new installs, so either a new physical install or a new VM for domain controllers, remote desktop servers, application or SQL servers, and Exchange servers. In fact, if you were to do an in-place upgrade, it probably would work. But if you were to ever open a case with Microsoft, if you had problems with it and you told them that you did an in-place upgrade on a remote desktop server, they'd probably say, well, there's your problem, right? So, so anyway, this is what they recommend. And there are some kind of caveats that come along with that as well. Quick thing about extended support. So as I mentioned earlier, they really are considering server 2012 R2 already on extended support. So they are not allowing any additional support or extended support after October 10th unless you are on an EA agreement or have Azure hosted servers. If you're not on an EA agreement right now, the minimum is 500 users. So if you're bigger and you do want to sign up for an EA agreement, you can to get that extended security support for Server 2012. October 10th is the hard date for end of support. So at that point, you will no longer be able to call in and ask any questions about the operating system. And the biggest part of it is you're not going to get any more security update releases. So any kind of vulnerabilities that are exploited or any of the security compromises or any of that kind of stuff are not going to be patched by Microsoft anymore. So that's the risk, right? So what happens if, I can't upgrade this because it's running a core software that I need? The safest thing is going to be to isolate that server on your network and set it up with walk-up, kiosk support, basically, to a local printer or something that keeps it off of the network, because otherwise that is a pretty massive security, hole in your network. So
potential vulnerability. Yep. And to this point, it can't be stressed enough that, October 10th, you mentioned,
yep.
We are at July 12th. So that's 3 months away. That's only 3 months. And depending on the size of your infrastructure, this planning and all of that takes time. So if you're not looking at it now, if you have several 2012 servers, especially if it's running your main domain, you need to be looking at this now. This is not and not trying to go into the fear mongering or anything, but having patched support, again, as John said, you have to underline that really hard, because that's a key part these days. Is you need to patch something for some security release. Microsoft, they still have security patches that they need to release. Some new vulnerabilities coming out every day. So have to underscore that point.
So the process for upgrading, so at this point, we've kind of determined how serious everything is, and what do we need to do now, right? How do we move forward, right? So if you're using VMware, you have to make sure that you're on a supported version of VMware in order to install Server 2019 or 2022. If you're going to go to 2022, is the version of ESXi that's required to run Server 2022. So if you're on 6.5 or 5.5, a lot of times we'll find that these Server 2012s are running on older hardware. So VMware, the way that it works is it's supported to a certain level of hardware, and then when they go to a new version, there's a new hardware support list. So if your hardware is too old to install version 7, then you have to upgrade your hardware. And that's where it kind of becomes scary, right? At this point, is if you have to order something, is it in stock? Can you get it in by that time? Can you get it scheduled by that time to not only upgrade the operating system, but replace some core server hardware at the same time? So when putting together your list, identify all the VMs that are running with 2008. Hopefully you don't have any of those anymore, but just in case you do, and server 2012. And then take a look at really a deep look at the machine roles, what kind of installed applications you have, and basically what kind of resources they're taking. At that point, you may need to make a change in hardware. And you'll want to create an upgrade plan based on server types. So if you have 2 domain controllers and 3 SQL servers and an RDS server, and you're going to want to figure out which ones you can do for in-place upgrades and which ones that you can do or will need to do as brand new VMs or installs. One of the thing that's going to be important is to make sure you still have space on your server to create those new VMs, and even to install new operating systems to make sure that the VMs have enough space to accommodate a larger operating system. What was that?
I said excellent.
Oh. Planning considerations. So compatibility issues with core software. This is probably the biggest part that's going to keep most users from being able to upgrade, right? So you purchased a piece of software back when 2012 was out, or even 2016 was out, but it was created for 2012, and you've installed it and have been running it ever since, with maybe some different updates in it, but nothing, not version updates in it. So if you haven't updated it to support different operating systems or newer operating systems, you'll have to engage your vendor and kind of start that whole process. So it might include moving to a different type of ERP program, or moving to a different program in general instead of just upgrading to a new version. Some of these software companies don't exist anymore either. So if there isn't an option to upgrade it, you'll either have to isolate it, keep running it on server 2012, like let's say you do upgrade, but you need to keep this alive for another 7 years or so for historic reasons. That's where you would put it on that private network and isolate it and turn it off basically, and just keep it for historic reasons. But if you do want to move forward with upgrading and getting onto server 2019 or 2022, it may require you purchasing new software, or at least a upgraded supported version of the software. So you'll want to gauge your vendor for all of those options that you basically have, and I'm sure they're dealing with it and scrambling it with their customers right now anyway. So there's a good chance that they're prepared to have these conversations if you haven't already had them. One of the things to also keep into consideration is your Microsoft licensing, or anything that's licensed basically by cores. If you do need to put in new hardware, you want to make sure that you're licensed for the core count that the new hardware is going to have. So let's say you have dual, let's say 8 core processors in your current hardware. So you have 16 total cores. And let's say you move to dual 12 core processors. And so now you have 24 cores. Microsoft requires you to now purchase extra core licensing software to cover all of the VMs that you're running on there. So not just to cover the server, but to cover all the VMs. So even if you have 2019 VMs, if you have 2016, anything like that that are already installed, and you have them licensed for the 16 cores, you now have to purchase new licensing to make sure that they're all licensed for the 24 cores. If that makes sense. And that includes standard enterprise and data center.
Yeah. So to take a break here 1 second. So you've covered quite a bit there. To backtrack, it isn't just upgrading the OS. I mean, that's already painfully clear. You've got the hardware. That's a potential risk. I mean, that we've gotten a lot better in the last 2 years as far as supply chain issues, but depending on the size that you have, it still could be issues. We're seeing some things here and there that have availability issues, right? Um, your core software, as we mentioned, whatever that happens to be, Microsoft products notwithstanding. I mean, Microsoft SQL Server would come along, but depending on what product runs on top of that, it may not be compatible with that. So you've got to look down this rabbit hole a little farther, right?
Yep.
Um, and then also the licensing model has changed. So you're going to want to make sure you stay compliant with that. So there's multiple financial considerations as well, not just upgrading the OS. So it's not a small thing that we're talking about here. Like, oh, it's 2012, we're fine. We've got 10 servers, or 10 VMs running 2012, but we're fine. No, there could also be the underlying infrastructure that may all need to be changed. So please look at the big picture is what we're saying.
Yeah, it's kind of a snowballing effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's you or, um, turning over a rock and finding more underneath it than you really thought. The hard part is going to be identifying the software, making sure everything is still in use. If there's some stuff that you can retire because maybe another piece of your software covers that, you may not need that old version, but then thinking about historical access to it as well. So you kind of
Mm-hmm.
almost have to think about your business continuity and being able to access some of that old data too.
Right.
So yeah, you might be able to just jump into Dynamics or something like that that you can use. But if you have an older system that maybe doesn't have APIs or doesn't have a good way to migrate a lot of that information, or it's just information that doesn't need to be migrated, but you still might need to access it, then you kind of have to have a plan for all of that aged information and what you're going to do with it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really kind of an all-encompassing exercise in
Sure.
figuring out what you need to do to be able to move forward in time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then, like I mentioned, if you are going to do new VMs on the same hardware, you want to make sure that you have room for that, both processing, storage, and RAM during the transition. In
Mm-hmm.
most cases, you're going to probably decommission the old Server 2012s and get that out of there so you can free up a little bit more space.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to make sure that that you're able to get that.
Okay. All right.
So, closing thoughts. So this is kind of where the rubber meets the road type of thing. The OS vulnerabilities, like we talked about before, are very real security threats. I think that can't be underlined any more than possible. Regulated industries, if you are the banking industry or any kind of regulated industry that has any kind of compliance, they're going to see out of support OSs as non-compliance, and you're going to get dinged for it
Mm.
on
Yep.
um, any of your assessments.
Cyber
Some
insurance
higher,
as well.
Yep,
Yep.
and cyber insurance is definitely going to it may negate some of your opportunity or options to recover in an incident type of situation. So some hardware is still delayed for shipment. That's kind of what David was talking about. Usually we're seeing not so much about the servers, but components of a server. So it can kind of delay the setup, even though the server's here, we might be missing a network card or something like that. So try to do our best to source as much of that as we can. But sometimes, we're just at the mercy of the vendors out there. So um, again, don't wait until the 11th hour to upgrade. It's basically going to be a first come first serve type of deal as far as what we can get to help you upgrade. If you're upgrading on your own, you're going to want to get a good plan together for getting prepared for it. What your end users need to know: do you need to rebuild your RDS environment after you've upgraded? Any of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of fallout that can happen from it. Software vendors are busy now upgrading other customers, so you're going to want to get in line with them. I have seen some software vendors already booking into the beginning of next year. So you want to make sure that, if you do have to isolate that network, or isolate those servers off the network until the first quarter when you can get upgraded. That might be something that you have to do, and that is something that we can help out with if you need to. And this is also a good time. It's a pretty big step, from Server 2012 to upgrade your technology. So what I mean by that is maybe it's time to look at Azure or hosting your infrastructure. If you're going to be rebuilding a lot of your servers anyway, it might be a good option to try going into something like, VDI or a VD environment, like a virtual desktop environment through Windows, Microsoft 365, or maybe it's time for, maybe you've grown big enough that maybe instead of just a server with onboard storage, you need a server and a SAN, or a couple of servers and a SAN. So maybe reassess your needs as a company and find out, maybe there's more that we can leverage, or maybe there's more that we need to do that we've kind of pushed off for a while. And this is a good time to kind of pivot or make kind of some of those decisions. So
Sure.
getting together with your site leaders, maybe talking about your business and the direction of your business and where you want to go in the near future. It's a good time to kind of reassess all of that stuff.
Sure. Absolutely. I do want to remind everyone that is watching us live that please feel free to chat us any questions. We only have a few minutes here left, but I wanted to be able to give everyone the opportunity to ask these questions because, again, as we can't stress enough, this is an important time here right now. And being that there's only a few months left here before this happens, if you do have questions, now is the time.
Yep,
So,
and I'll just
John,
I'll
okay.
just add to just quickly what we typically do with our customers is we do have some kind of scanning tools that we can use to kind of help scan the network, scan the servers, see what kind of applications they have, see what versions of OS they're on. So we can definitely help. If you're in a virtualized environment, we can look at what current resources are assigned to each virtual machine, so we can see how you're doing as far as sizing, to see if you have room for those extra VMs, or to see, maybe you are tapping out a little bit and you're going to have to replace your hardware. So there are some things that we can do in the early parts of the stage that can help and assist getting ready for this kind of an upgrade.
Certainly, certainly. So, in a hypothetical situation, let's throw out hypothetical. I'm an IT manager. I have a typical on-prem environment. I might have a VMware environment, and I've got a domain controller running. Let's say it's a 2019 domain controller, but I've got several application servers, say four of them, running. No, let's say they've been patched and upgraded, but they're on 2012 uh, type of servers. What what kind of a process are we talking about? Just in a general sense, how in a time frame wise and involved wise, what are we thinking? Are we talking a weekend, or are we talking this needs to take a month of Sundays, as we like to say?
Yeah, if it's just a simple upgrade, those upgrades aren't taking very long. Usually you give a day for it to kind of do its thing, right? To upgrade the
Mhm.
operating system. If you're
Sure,
creating new VMs and then migrating roles and data, typically that's going to be an after hours type of deal. So you're talking, some prep time and, kind of getting that environment ready for migrating to a new VM. The
sure,
most time is going to take from working with third-party vendors to get all their
sure. Yep,
stuff installed, all their databases moved or upgraded. Some databases, you can't just copy it and put it on the new server. They actually have to do an in-place upgrade of the database itself
yep,
and prepare it for the new environment. So in those cases, there might be some, considerable downtime before you do, a migration. Building up VMs, depending upon your licensing. If we do have to do a VMware update, we usually update the firmware on the hardware at the same time, or you might be that might be where you hit your restriction on what version of VMware is actually supported. So you, at that point, then you're adding on more, because now you have a hardware build, a purchase, a hardware build, and then creating, that new VM environment before, and then you're migrating other VMs over to that environment too. So it might not be that you're just touching, the server 2012s. You might be touching everything,
Well, I have to say, John, I appreciate all this information. This has been a great time together. But we have reached the end of our time together, and it's been very informative. For those of you that are still with us, if you have questions about this live broadcast or any further questions about the upgrade of 2012 server R2, feel free to visit us our website at www.netcenter.net, or email us at info@netcenter.net, or on any of our social media channels. But please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click the bell for notifications so that you'll receive any of our live notifications, which we do every 2 weeks at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So, John, thanks again. We'll do more stuff with Microsoft. I know we will in the future. We do a lot of this. So, as always,
Absolutely.
It's been great fun. So, and for those of you joining us, thanks for joining us today on NCI Live.
Thank you.